The story I'm going to share with you took place 4 years ago when I was 18 years old, and it's definitely one of the scariest experiences thus far. I've been living with a friend to my family in the suburbs, 20 minutes outside Stockholm, Sweden for 3 years, and was planning to move back home to the serenity of my hometown up north. My best friend, Cassie, came to visit one weekend, and we started fantasizing about living together. To make a long story short, we found a wonderful apartment for rent, but only for 2 months. Perfect. That would be a good amount of time to party and come up with all kinds of mischief before retiring from the big city. During this brief time of living together, it was confirmed that we made a dangerous duo. We were equally mischievous and got up to all kinds of risky adventures. But it was one particular night where dangerous fun stopped being amusing and got very, very dangerous. It was a Friday, and me and Cassie decided to have a drink or two at one of the local bars. I used to work in the same building, so I knew the owner and most of the people frequenting the place. We found a table with full view of the entire establishment and its patrons. As usual, we were observing and commenting on the drunken people like two commentators watching a game of football played on an ice rink. In other words, we were having a blast. One beer in, 2 men entered and took a table across from ours in the farthest corner, so it was hard not to look at them. One was of African descent, and I couldn't help but to take notice of his good looks and fabulously posh style. The other was white and looked like the stereotype hooligan, as in football supporter, not a thug. The only similarity they had with each other was their shaved heads. Being 18 years old and tipsy and loving a good mystery, I couldn't help but notice that they were acting sort of shady. They sat with their heads together, whispering, and after a while the hooligan went to the restroom. "They are definitely up to something," I stated to Cassie, who immediately was on board to solve the mystery at hand. Our intrigue increased as the hooligan came back to resume their whispering conversation. He gave something to his friend, who rose and also went to the washing closet. "Drugs," Cassie nodded with a victorious smile. I agreed, and we mused about it for a while, what kind of drug, etc. Suddenly the black man came up to our table with a friendly smile, asking if he could join us. Both me and Cassie took note that his friend had left. We invited him to sit, and we made polite introductions. "Very nice to meet you, Hannah," he smiled, and I inwardly swooned a little bit. "I'm Allie." We continued to make polite banter, none of us drunk enough to be overly familiar. Then the hooligan, Allie's friend, appeared from nowhere and sat down next to him. What they did next completely baffled us. They pretended not to know each other. Really, they shook hands and introduced themselves. We had literally been sitting 12 feet away from them, and now they were acting strangers. And they knew we knew that, so the entire thing was very weird. With the skills of silent communication, me and Cassie decided to act oblivious. We were going to figure out these guys. Stupid. We ordered another round of beers, and the owner came with a tray of shots ordered by the guys. The hooligan disappeared somewhere during the time it takes to finish a beer, and we lingered with Ollie, having a generally good time. The entire time we talked with him felt relaxed and platonic. He was friendly and funny, and somewhere along those lines, we forgot our initial mission. "You smoke?" we asked as we slowly prepared to leave. "Yeah, of course," he said with a hopeful grin. We told him that we were going home to get stoned and that he was welcome to join. He politely accepted, and we all left to go outside. As I stood up, I felt myself swaying, actually feeling drunk. A bit weird since I'd only had 2 beers and 1 shot. Well, thank you, goddess of buzz, I thought. Again, stupid. We called our cab, and while we waited, I felt the need to sit down. I found a bench, and it only vaguely helped the world to stop spinning. How are you doing? It was Ollie. He sat down next to me and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I looked up at him and was surprised to find his entire expression had gone from polite and friendly to pure crude lust. I didn't have time to react before he kissed me. When he did, this extremely odd sensation came over me of feeling physically and mentally unable to obey my wish to pull away. The cab arrived, and all 3 of us got in, even though I, by now, didn't at all want the guy to come with us. Usually, I have no problems being blunt or speaking my mind. That's why the sensation of having no will was so unpleasant. I'd never experienced anything like it. It was a short journey home, but it felt like ages, mostly because Ollie was sat in the middle with his arms around us. Am I not the lucky one tonight? He asked the cab driver and grinned, and my and Cassie's eyes met. Hers mirrored how I felt: panic and confusion. When we arrived, I was properly out of it, barely able to walk, and it freaked the shit out of me. I never get that drunk, and I hadn't planned to this night either. I immediately went for the kitchen, feeling sick, while Cassie and Ollie went to the living room to sit down. I have the biggest fear of throwing up, so my heart was beating like crazy and I was scared, very scared. I didn't throw up in the end, and I wondered that if I had, maybe it would have ended differently. After 20 minutes or so of drinking water, the nausea passed, but I was still feeling very strange. I didn't want to leave Cassie alone with Ollie for too long, and when I made it back to the living room, I noticed my balance was way off, and it was by sheer luck I didn't hit any doors or walls on the way to the sofa. Cassie was just finishing a blunt and excused herself to go to the bathroom. I, by this time, was unable to even speak. I was entirely immobile. Allie sat down next to me, too close. "You're too beautiful, you know that?" he whispered, and I felt sick at his hot breath. I tried to move away, but I wasn't able to. I couldn't move a muscle. I felt the familiar feeling of panic creeping in when I realized I actually sat paralyzed. His hand began up my leg, and his lips were now at my neck. "You'd have no chance," he kept whispering, even though Cassie was nowhere to be seen. Where the fuck was she? I began to realize that she probably was sick in the bathroom. Fuck. Ollie then grabbed my hand. "I could probably kill both of you if I wanted to," he mused out loud while he steered my hand into his pants. His other hand undid them before I knew it. He was using my hand to pleasure himself. I vividly remember the feeling of trying to command my muscles to move with no result. It was terrifying. "You wouldn't be able to do anything at all, would you, Hannah?" He grinned at me, and all I could do was to stare back at him, trying to will the bastard to burst into flames. I felt sick to my stomach, rage and fear mingling in my mind while I sat completely powerless with my hand on this guy's dick while he whispered threats against the skin of my neck. His other hand began to grope at my body. "Two girls alone. I don't have to kill you tonight. I can just come back, you know? You wouldn't have a chance. Not if I bring my knife." Every fiber of my being wanted to punch the guy out and run away at the same time, but I couldn't. Then I heard the wonderful sound of the bathroom door unlocking, and Allie pulled out my hand and covered himself up. If the fucker hadn't, I know for certain Cassie would have showed him her knife. While I could do anything but to just sit there, Cassie, who seemed to feel alright, made another joint and blazed it up. Ali declined on his turn. No? Then why are you here? Cassie asked. I don't like smoking. Cassie frowned and insisted with the joint. She seemed more sober now and suspicion was rising to her features. But Ali kept declining. They went on like this for a while, and as they did, I gathered all my strength to stand up. On the 100th try, I made it. I gave Cassie a look, then, like a robot, put on survival mode, made it to the bedroom where I collapsed and resumed the paralyzed state. It was only a minute before Cassie came to check on me. You need to get him out of here. I was barely coherent. Now, do whatever it takes. Cassie, who apparently had become his target in my absence, agreed and left. While I laid there, I could hear the muffled voices, but he didn't leave. Why the fuck didn't he leave? An hour or so passed before I finally heard the door slamming shut, and Cassie came back to tell me he'd left. We eventually passed out, and in the morning, neither of us was hungover, and we went through the previous night. It was clear that I, if not both of us, had been drugged during some time at the bar. Cassie told me that she'd been forced to eventually give him money for a cab to get him to leave, as he'd blatantly refused to leave unless she did. I told her what had happened when she'd been in the bathroom. Panic ensued again, and we went through the apartment. The bathroom window was open and the back door unlocked, and Cassie's laptop and brand new, very expensive camera was missing, but we never saw him again. We moved away a week later, and the relief of being across the country away from him is unexplainable. We have gone through the event countless of times since, and while we are kicking ourselves for inviting Ali to begin with, we always agreed that as soon as whatever it was he had put in our drinks hit, it was out of our hands. Even though we have been reckless and presumptuous in the past, always believing we could stay on top of any situation, we have never, or would never, come close to this on purpose, as both of us are overly paranoid and suspicious of people and their true intentions. And what I'm still wondering is, what part did the hooligan friend have to do with any of what happened? Did they plan it together? And if Cassie hadn't sobered up, what would have happened?